Hi, I'm Carrie, and welcome to my studio. This is episode 16, and I'm really excited to share with you all of my knitting projects today. I feel like this one is going to be short and sweet since I just have 3 things to talk about today. I have 1 finished object and 2 works in progress, though neither of those works in progress are very far along yet. So I'll go ahead and dive right in with what I'm wearing, which is also my finished object. So this is Parsed Tank, and this is the 4th version that I have knit of this pattern. This is my own design, and the pattern just released, though before getting into any of that stuff, I'm going to tell you all about the one that I'm wearing here. So Parsed Tank is really fun because it has a lot of different options. So there are 3 different neckline options and then 3 different body fit options as well. So on this one, I did a V-neck at both the front and the back, and I also did an A-line body, and I did the most dramatic A-line that's included in the pattern. There are like 3 different options for varying degrees of A-line shaping. So also with this one, I did 2 different colors at the front and back because it is knit in 4 panels, so you can play with color in a bunch of fun different ways compared to like what you normally can do with just a one-piece construction. So I will go ahead and stand up and show you this knit. So I have to stand like a little awkwardly here, but this is the A-line fit, and as you can see, there's a ton of ease at the hem here, and here's what it looks like from the side. I did want to note that I used 2 different yarns between the front and the back, and this is a primarily cellulose fiber blend, and like super drapey, it's milk fiber. So it is kind of looking longer in the back than it is in the front just because of the drape of the fiber there. So the back also has a V-neck, and I really love how this turned out. It is everything that I want out of a summer top. So it's basically fitted around here only and then flows away thanks to that A-line shaping and doesn't touch my body, which is great for the heat of summer. Of course, you know, I'm probably not going to be wearing this outside if it's like super hot outside, but it's great for indoors. It's great for, you know, if it's a little bit cooler in the morning or in the evening, or honestly, even if you're just like in the shade instead of in the sun, it's a really great piece to wear. So I am so pleased with how this turned out. So I'll share a couple of details about the size, the yarn I used, all of that good stuff. So I knit the size 36. And as I mentioned, I knit an A-line shaping version. So this adds about 10 inches of circumference at the bottom of the hem. So, you know, you start off at 36 at the bust, and then it goes out to 46 at the hem. So there's a ton of extra room at the hem, making sure that it's not feeling clingy. It has really lovely drape. So my measurements are approximately a 37-inch full bust and about maybe 34, 35 inches upper bust. So there's a little bit of positive ease at like where the underarms are sitting since it's just above my full bust point. So full bust is here and the underarm is kind of sitting like just a little bit higher here. I will say that due to the fiber content of these yarns, I'm using 2 different yarns between the front and the back. Both of these are stash yarns that I've had for ages, like more than a decade in my stash, and I was just honestly never going to use them otherwise. I bought them when I used to do a lot of single skein projects, and that's just not what I'm doing now, but I absolutely loved both the colors, so I'm like, what do I have to lose? I'm just gonna knit a garment out of them and have one in the front and one in the back, and that means like kind of get 2 garments in one, which is a little fun. But the front here, this is primarily merino wool. I think it's like maybe 70 or 80 merino, some amount of silk and some amount of yak, so a blend of fibers, but mostly merino. And then the back is primarily milk fiber, which is like a tencel essentially. So acts like other rayon cellulose fibers like bamboo and that sort of thing. That's kind of what this fiber acts like, and that means it's super drapey and also super inelastic. So on that note, I probably should have accommodated for the lack of elasticity and the amount of drape that this yarn has and adjusted the armhole to be a little bit shorter on that panel, because even though I blocked it to the same measurements, how it acts on the body is a little bit different from front to back. So the front has, you know, nice elasticity and, you know, you kind of have that bounce. It keeps everything held nicely in place. And then on the back, you don't have that elasticity, so it just has the drape, and then there's nothing to like counteract gravity. So the armhole ends up sitting a little bit lower on this one compared to the other versions that I've knit. That being said, I can always go in and like thread a little bit of clear elastic through the I-cord edge here and solve that problem by just, you know, having that little bit of elastic help to cinch things in. Or honestly, I could even go unseam the shoulders, cut out a bit of the back and just graft things back together and it would be fine, but I'm probably not going to do that. If I do anything, I will probably just put some elastic through, though I'm okay with the amount of exposure there is at the underarm area. It's generally fine. I even have a sports bra that's like close to this color that I can just wear underneath it and I'm okay with it showing. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this garment around so you can see what the other side looks like in front, since as I said, it's reversible. Of course, I did do a V on the front and the back, so there's not like a ton of difference between the front and the back, but they are a different color, different yarn, etc. So I think it would be interesting to show both. All right, so I flipped it around. So now I have the primarily milk fiber yarn in front here, and I will stand up and you can definitely see the difference in drape between the other side. Also, there's some wrinkles. Apologies for that. It's probably because, you know, I was kind of leaning into the couch there, but it has a ton of drape, and you can also see that because of the difference in drape, this does kind of get a little bit lower on this side compared to the back here. But I think it's fun to have the two different options. The colors aren't like so vastly different that it feels weird seeing them together, but they are different enough that it definitely feels like you get two tops in one. So that's been kind of fun to have either color as an option that I can wear. I just finished this one up last week, so I've only had a couple of chances to wear it. So I basically wore it the day after I finished it, and I am wearing it today again, but I'm really excited to have it to wear for the rest of summer. And I really like that I chose the A-line fit option on this one, since all of my other versions that I had knit previously, I'd done a straight body, which like I love a straight body, especially on a garment that has like a more fitted upper body. The straight body doesn't feel like oversized or anything. It just feels like a nice classic fit. And this is definitely different than that. It feels swingy and breezy, which is, as I said, really great for summer wearing. So I'll go ahead and share a quick overview of the construction of this garment because I feel like it is pretty unique. I don't know if I've seen other garments constructed in this manner. I had a really fun time doing it, and I've now done it 4 times over, and I kind of want to find other things that I could construct similarly because it is really fun to see it come together. So this is work top down, which means you're casting on at the shoulder seam and you're only casting on a few stitches because it's a tank top with a, you know, relatively narrow shoulder strap. And then since there are 3 necklines, you start following the shaping for the neckline option that you want to work. So this one is the V neckline. So of course you're shaping along the neckline edge, and later you introduce shaping at the underarm edge as well. And this has an integrated I-cord trim that's essentially just slip stitches along the edges of the work, both at the armhole and the neckline, to help provide stability while you're wearing it and to prevent things from like overstretching. Here on this side where I have a lot more drape and less elasticity compared to the other side, it definitely could use maybe a little bit more structure, and that's kind of why I'm thinking of maybe adding a little elastic into it, but the other side is fine. So if you're using a primarily wool-based yarn, even a yarn with a lot of cotton in it, I knit one in Purl Soho Santolina, which is like mostly cotton plus some linen or hemp and a little bit of tencel, but like the primary fiber in that one is cotton. That one, the cotton is providing a lot of structure, so you don't end up with the same issue that I'm dealing with here where there's just not the same structure. It's just very drapey and, you know, growing lengthwise, so you kind of counteract that with a cotton fiber content. And I've lost my train of thought where I was going with this. I think the structure of the I-cord, yes. So most fiber contents that you would have with like a typical sock yarn that you might be knitting this top with, you'd probably be fine with the amount of structure that the integrated I-cord provides. And then because there's the integrated I-cord, I continue that detail along the armhole edge. So there's an integrated I-cord cast on to add the additional fabric that you need for the underarm. And if you're doing a scoop neck or a square neck for the center front neckline, so anywhere that you just need to cast on more stitches, it's an integrated I-cord cast on that continues that trim detail without needing to do any extra finishing work. And then there's also a tiny bit of lateral braiding in this top. So I'll show you here. So there's just a little bit of lateral braiding here to connect the slip stitch details from the edge. So there's like a little slip stitch detail that runs down the edge, and it continues down along the side seam as well. So to be able to connect everything together, you use just a little bit of lateral braiding. So if you've wanted to tackle lateral braiding before, but you don't necessarily want to commit to a project with a lot of lateral braiding, this would be a good one to do it, to just kind of try out the technique over a small space for this top, which is the V-neck. There's honestly just like a tiny little bit at each of the underarms. So that's a good way to try out the technique if you've been wanting to try out something new. And then once you're kind of past the upper body here, you've done all of the neckline, the armhole shaping, you've done the little bit of lateral braiding and that integrated I-cord cast on. It's basically just like smooth sailing for the rest of the top. So the primary pattern instructions have a straight body, so you're just like working even in a panel until you reach the hem. For the other body fits, there's a little bit of shaping either to do some decreases and then increases for a fitted body, or just increases if you're doing the A-line body. But overall, really straightforward. You're just basically mostly working in reverse stockinette, though it is worked flat. So it's like the same amount of knitting as working stockinette flat. We're just using the reverse stockinette as the face side of the fabric. And then once you have all 4 of your panels complete, then you pick up stitches along each of the edges and join things together with a 3-needle bind off. And I know some of you might be thinking, oh, I have to pick up a bunch of stitches, but I promise it's as easy as possible. Since there is a slip stitch edge along the panels, you're just picking up 1 stitch for each of the slip stitches, just like you would for a sock heel. There's honestly like nothing you can mess up. You're just putting your needle through each of the slip stitches, picking up 1 stitch per slipped stitch. And then the only thing that you have to do is just count after you've done the pickups on each side to make sure you have the same number of stitches picked up. And if you don't have the same number of stitches picked up, like say you're off on one side, you could honestly just like work 2 stitches together in the 3-needle bind off as you're working. No one's gonna know. Or if you really want to, you could like drop a stitch off of one side or pick up an extra stitch on the other side to make sure they're exactly equal between the 2 sides before you join things together. I've had such a fun time designing this pattern and knitting this up several times. And also the preview knit that I did was really, really informative and helped me add a bunch of extra things into the pattern to make it as easy as possible to knit. So since there are at the same time instructions for the neckline and the armhole, since they're like, you know, different options there, and also modification instructions if you want like a higher neckline, there are instructions to tell you how to do that. So I added in a little guide on how to approach at the same time shaping. And then I also created an entire set of shaping tables for every single size and every single neckline option. That means you have a row by row checklist to see, am I doing shaping at the armhole? Am I doing shaping at the neckline? And just being able to check off each row as you go makes it super easy to work. And if you're not as familiar with at the same time instructions, it's a great tool to help you feel confident in knowing exactly what's going on. So the shaping tables are automatically included with the pattern purchase. There's nothing extra that you need to do. You'll just get 2 files delivered to you when you purchase on Ravelry or PayHip. And there's also a digital set of shaping tables as well. So if you're someone who likes a spreadsheet, you can work with it digitally. The other really nice thing about the shaping tables is that it provides a row by row stitch count. So row by row stitch counts are a little bit challenging to include when you have something with at the same time instructions, and also when you have multiple options, because, you know, the stitch count isn't going to be the same based on which option you're making. If you're making any adjustments, the stitch counts also won't be the same to what the pattern says. So that's where the shaping tables are really, really nice, and especially the digital shaping tables, because if you move things around in the digital shaping tables, the stitch count calculation should be able to kind of recalculate based on how you've adjusted your shaping. I hope this tool makes things a lot more useful and user-friendly for you as you're working up your projects. And if you're interested in purchasing the pattern, you can do so on Ravelry or PayHip. I've linked both of those below, and there's also a discount code during release week, so don't miss that in the description box below. All right, on to my 2 works in progress. So neither of these is particularly far along, I will start with the one that has been on the needles longer. So this is my fingering weight Ridgeview Tee. So Ridgeview Tee is a pattern that is initially written for DK weight. I just wanted a fingering weight version, so I'm like remathing it to work with a fingering weight gauge. And it has a fun little detail here at the hem. I am working the back and I feel like I'm almost done with the body. I have maybe another inch or two before I start doing stuff for the armholes. But this basically just looks like a really boring rectangle right now, which I guess it currently is a really boring rectangle. That being said, it's a really drapey rectangle, so that is super fun. So I will just go ahead and share some details about the yarn that I'm using and what's going to be happening next in this one, because again, I'm not working exactly to the pattern, so I have some stuff to figure out. So I am knitting this in Purl Soho Oleander. It is 50% cotton and 50% linen, and this is the second project that I have used with this yarn. My first project I just finished up a couple of weeks ago. That was my Vee Tee long sleeve that I worked up, and I absolutely love the finished fabric from that yarn. So as soon as I finished that, I kind of cast this one on right away. So again, 50% cotton, 50% linen. It is not necessarily the easiest to work with on your, at least like the experience with your hands. So I do have to take breaks when I'm working on this, but the finished fabric is absolutely gorgeous, totally worthwhile in terms of, you know, the kind of care that you need to put into making sure you're taking breaks and all of that to have a more positive knitting experience. That being said, it's not like a bad knitting experience. It's just like, it can stress your hands out. So something to, you know, keep in mind, have as a caution as you're knitting with a more inelastic fiber like this one. But again, really, really nice and worthwhile, at least in my opinion. So getting back into the project here that is currently just a boring rectangle. So the next thing that's going to be happening is a little bit of armhole stuff. So I'll be casting on stitches at each side to kind of add on an integrated armhole trim, and also working a little bit of shaping through that armhole to make it wider at the top shoulders compared to at the bottom shoulders. So it just provides a little bit of additional coverage over the shoulder area. So that is what I need to figure out next. I need to figure out if I need to do the same amount of shaping as I did for the DK weight or add an extra shaping pair on each side to make it a little bit wider. So I need to determine that. And then I will also need to figure out my short row situation. So for the short rows, because I have a different gauge, it's going to mean a different number of stitches and a different number of rows to create the shoulder slope that I need for this project. So I'm trying to create a little triangle that accommodates, you know, like the anatomy of a shoulder. So I just need to figure out, okay, how many stitches wide is my shoulder? How many rows tall is my shoulder slope? And then figure out, you know, how many groupings essentially do I need to have for each stitch group of the short row to fit the correct number of stitches within the correct number of rows. It shouldn't take too long, and I do have like spreadsheets set up which kind of like auto calculate, you know, the stitch row thing based on other short row sleeves that I have done in the past. So I'll probably just like copy over one of those, you know, calculation bases and toss my numbers in and see what comes out and just do a quick double check to make sure that it is right. But I'm very excited about that because then I will basically have only a little bit of stuff to figure out for working the front, and what I have to do for the front is figure out the V shaping. But I still need to get through all the back first. This is a slower going project because I'm taking breaks, so we'll see how far I get by the next episode in terms of total progress. I'm hoping to be done with the back, but I don't know if I will have gotten to the front or how far into it I will be by next time. This is my next work in progress, and again, it looks relatively like nothing. So here's the back of it. There is a nice lateral braid detail at the shoulder here, and a V-neck. And then I've just started the other side. So the construction for this one is top down. So you start with this little bit of lateral braid detailing, and then you work the one back panel, working V-neck shaping while you're working the short rows, then continue the V-neck shaping until you've gotten to the bottom of the V-neck shaping, then start the other side of the back, do the same thing, and then work even for a while, kind of joining those two back pieces together until you've reached the bottom of the armhole. Then picking up for the front, doing short row shaping for the shoulders and also working the neckline shaping, repeating for the other side, and then, you know, joining for a little bit until you reach the bottom of the armhole, and then you're working the round for the rest of the garment. So I did not share any of the details of this. So this is my double Vee Tee pattern. This is an upcoming design. I've already knit one of these before. I knit a short sleeve version with kind of a swingy hem. This is going to be a long sleeve version with a straight body. So as you can see, I love providing options in my patterns. So my Parsed Tank has a bunch of fit options and a bunch of neckline options. This one is going to have a couple of fit options, so like 2 body fit options and then sleeve length options. So that is what's going on here. The yarn that I'm using this is a beautiful like emerald foresty green kind of situation, and really, really beautiful. I think it's like a color that just works really, really well on me. So I'm excited to knit this up and see how it turns out in this beautiful dark green color. Again, I'm not too far into this. I started this as soon as I finished up this top. So once this was off the needles, this was the next thing that I cast on. So yeah, again, not too far into this one. I hope to be much farther by next time, hopefully just working in the body at least by the next time that I share. And I think that's everything that I have to talk about today. Thank you so much for joining me as I chatted about all of my knitting projects. I would love to hear what you are working on right now. Are you still in summer mode and thinking about all of your summer knitting? Since we are technically less than halfway through summer, we're gonna hit the halfway point of summer later this week. So let me know what you're working on. Are you still in summer mode or are you already into fall? You can always find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Carrie Knits, and I will see you next time.